October 17th, 1900, Volume 4. A suffering soul and a most humble prayer make Jesus lose all his strength, and render him so weak as to let himself be bound by that soul. The appearance of justice. As my adorable Jesus continued to come, I seemed to see him in such great suffering as to arouse compassion. Throwing himself into my arms, he said to me, "My daughter, break the fury of my justice, otherwise." At that moment I seemed to see divine justice, armed with swords, with darts of fire, such as to strike terror, and also the fortitude with which she can act. All frightened, I said, "How can I break your fury if I see you so strong as to be able to annihilate heaven and earth in one simple instant?" And he, "Yet a suffering soul and a most humble prayer make me lose all my strength, and render me so weak as to let myself be bound by that soul as she pleases." And I, "Ah, Lord, in what an ugly appearance is justice showing herself!" And Jesus added, "She is not ugly. If you see her armed like this, it is because of men. But in herself she is good and holy, like my other attributes, because there cannot be even a shadow of evil in me. It is true that her appearance seems harsh, piercing, bitter, but her fruits are sweet and delicious." Having said this, he disappeared. October 17th, 1904, Volume 6. In order to find the divinity, one must operate united with the humanity of Christ and with his very will. Continuing in my usual state, blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "My daughter, it is necessary to operate through the veil of the humanity of Christ in order to find the divinity. That is, to operate united with his humanity, with the very will of Christ, as if his will and that of the soul were one, in order to please him alone. Operating with his very ways, directing everything to Christ, calling him in everything the soul does, as if he himself were to do her very actions. By doing this, the soul finds herself in continuous contact with God. In fact, for Christ, his humanity was nothing other than a sort of veil that covered the divinity. Therefore, by operating in the midst of these veils, she already finds herself with God. One who does not want to operate through his most holy humanity, and wants to find Christ, is like one who wants to find the fruit without finding the skin. It is impossible. October 17th, 1910, Volume 9. As much love and union with Jesus as the soul has, so much value her sacrifices have. As I was in my usual state, I was praying my loving Jesus for the happy transit of a priest who had been my confessor years before. And I said to my beloved Jesus, "Remember how many sacrifices he made, how much zeal he had for your honor and glory. And then how much did he not do for me? How much did he not suffer? On this point you must render him to us by letting him pass even into heaven." And blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, I do not look so much at the sacrifices, but at the love with which they are made, and at the union with me that they have. So, the more the soul is united with me, the more I take into account her sacrifices. If the soul is more tightly united with me, I take great account of her littlest sacrifices, because in the union there is the measure of love. And the measure of love is eternal measure, which has no end and no boundaries. On the other hand, with a soul who may sacrifice herself very much, but is not united with me, I look at her sacrifice as that of a stranger, and I give her the remuneration she deserves, a limited one. Imagine a father and a son who love each other. The son makes small sacrifices, and the father, because of the bond of union of paternity, of sonship, and of love, which is the strongest bond, looks at these small sacrifices as a great thing. He is triumphant. He feels honored. He gives all of his riches to his son, and dedicates all of his attentions and cares to his son. Now consider a servant who works all day long, is exposed to heat and to cold, is at the command of his master, and if necessary, stays up even at night on his behalf. And what does he receive? The miserable remuneration of one day, such that, if he does not work every day, he will have to starve. Such is the difference that passes between the soul who possesses union with me and the soul who does not possess it. While he was saying this, I felt I was outside of myself together with blessed Jesus. And again I said to him, "My sweet love, tell me, where is this soul?" And Jesus, "In purgatory." Oh, if you saw in what light he is swimming, you would be amazed. And I, you say that he is in purgatory, and then you say that he swims in light. And Jesus, yes, he finds himself swimming in light, because he had kept this light in deposit, and in the act of dying, this light has invested him and will never leave him. I understood that this light was his good works done with purity of intention. October 17th, 1911, Volume 10. Jesus gets more taste from the love of the pilgrim soul than for that of the saints. It seems that my most sweet Jesus came for a little longer than usual. It seemed he was wearing the crown of thorns, and I, removing it from him, drove it into my head. But after a little while, in looking at Jesus, I saw him crowned with thorns again. And Jesus, "See, my daughter, how they offend me. You removed one from me, and they have woven another. They never leave me free. They weave me crowns of thorns continuously." And I removed it again from him. And Jesus, pleased, drew near my mouth and poured a little bit of a most sweet liqueur. And I, "Jesus, what are you doing? You are full of bitternesses, and you pour sweetnesses into me? This is not appropriate." And Jesus, "Let me do it. You too needed to be cheered. Even more, I want you to take some rest inside my heart." Oh, how comfortable it was. Then he put me out, and I, "Why did you put me out? I was so comfortable in your heart. How beautiful it was." And Jesus, "When I keep you inside of me, I alone enjoy you. When I put you out, everyone enjoys you, and you can take the defense of your brothers. You can plead for them. You can have them spared, so much so that the saints say that I content you more than them, and that I take more taste from your love than from theirs. And I say to them that I do this with love and with justice, because with you I can share my pains, but not with them. Since you are a pilgrim soul, you can take the pains of others as well as mine upon yourself, and by this you have the strength to disarm me. Unless I did not want to, like last night, when I bound your arms very tightly so that you might not oppose my will. But they no longer have these weapons in their power, so much so that if I have to chastise, I hide from you who can come up with something, but not from them. And I, certainly, certainly, O Jesus, you must take more contentment from my love than from theirs, because theirs is the love of the blessed. They see you, they enjoy you continuously, and are absorbed within your most holy and divine will. They are completely dissolved in you. How great can their love really be, since they receive continuous life from you? But I, poor one, your privations alone give me continuous death. And Jesus, poor daughter of mine, you are right. October 17th, 1924, Volume 17. With how much love God creates souls, how he raises them, how he waters them and gives all of himself to them. I was thinking of the great love with which Jesus loves us. My mind was wandering within the eternal love, and my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, showed me spokes of light before my mind. Within these spokes there was a sun, and this sun contained as many rays for as many existing creatures. And each creature had a ray all for herself, which gave her life, light, heat, strength, growth, everything that is necessary to form a life. It was delightful to see how each creature was attached, like branch to the vine, to each ray of this sun, from which she had been delivered. And while my mind was wandering through this, my adorable Jesus said to me, "My daughter, do you see with how much love I love the creature? Before coming out to the light of the day of this world, she was already in my womb, and in delivering her I did not leave her. A ray of light containing my life follows her in order to administer to her all that is necessary to develop this life. And with how much care do I not raise her? With how much love do I not water her? I myself become light, heat, food, defense. And when she ends her days in time, on the way of that same ray, I withdraw her into my womb, to let her wander through the celestial fatherland. My love for the creature becomes more than the sun which I formed in the blue heavens. Even more, the sun I created for the benefit of humanity is nothing other than the shadow of the true sun. It is my ray which I communicate to the creature. The sun of the atmosphere does not form the plants, nor does it give them water so as not to let them wither, nor does it provide all those aids which are necessary so that the plants may grow beautiful and strong. And men, even if blind, can in part enjoy its light. It only does its office of illuminating and warming, and it moves on. And if the plants are not watered, it can do nothing to communicate its effects to them. Rather, it withers them even more. On the other hand, I, who am the true sun of the souls, do not leave them, either at night or at daytime. I myself form the souls. I give them the water of my grace so as not to let them wither. I nourish them with the light of my truths. I strengthen them with my examples. I give them the zephyr of my caresses to purify them, the dew of my charisms to embellish them, the arrows of my love to warm them. In sum, there is nothing I do not do for them. I am everything for them, and I place my whole life at the creature's disposal, for her own good. But how much ingratitude on the part of creatures! They seem to be attached like branches to my vine, not out of love, but by force, because they cannot do without me. And so they grow like those branches which, not receiving all the good humors that the vine contains, grow thin, without ever forming mature grapes, but unripe, such as to embitter my divine taste. Ah, if all reflected on how I love their souls, they would all be taken by the power and the attractiveness of my love, and they would love me. Therefore, love me, and may your love expand so much as to love me for all. October 17th, 1925, Volume 18. The eternal wisdom has established that the food of man's soul be the will of God. After 2 days of most bitter privations of my highest good, Jesus, I felt him move in my interior. I seemed to see him in my interior, sitting, with his head leaning on one side upon my shoulder, with his mouth turned toward my mouth, in the act of administering the words to me. I clasped him to myself, and I began to listen to him, abandoning all of myself in him. So it seemed that he was saying to me, "My daughter, my will is more than food." Food gives strength to the body. It warms it. It increases the blood. It enlivens the intelligence if it is dim. It puts liveliness in all the members and pushes the creature to new works and sacrifices. On the other hand, one who is on an empty stomach, not giving the necessary food to her body, is weak, cold, lacking in blood, her intelligence dim, exhausted in all of her members, and this leads her to melancholy and pushes her to do nothing, with no desire to sacrifice herself in anything. Poor one, she feels life missing in all of her person, and this is so true that, when an illness is mortal for a creature, she abandons food, and by abandoning food she disposes herself to death. Now, since the eternal wisdom has established that the soul too should have food, she was assigned the supreme will as delicious food. So one who takes this food is strong in doing good. She is as though soaked with love for her God. This food increases the divine blood in order to form the growth of the life of God within her. Like sun, it is reflected in her intelligence, to make her know her Creator and be formed in his likeness. It puts liveliness in the whole soul, in order to put all virtues in force, and it pushes her to new works and to sacrifices unheard of. The food of my will gives itself in every instant, at each breath, at night, during the day, in each thing, and as many times as one wants. Nor is there any danger as with corporal food that in taking too much of it, it may do harm and even produce illness. No, rather the more one takes of it, the more it fortifies and raises the soul to the likeness of her Creator. One can remain with one's mouth always opened in the act of taking this celestial food. All the opposite for one who does not take this food of my will. For one who does not take it at all, it can be said that she disposes herself to die eternally. As for one who seldom feeds herself, she is weak and inconstant in good. She is cold in love. She is lacking in divine blood, in such a way that the divine life grows as though anemic within her. The light of her intelligence is so dim that she knows little or nothing of her Creator, and not knowing him, his likeness is so far away from her, for as much as she is far away from the food of his will. She is without liveliness in doing good, because she does not have sufficient food. And now patience escapes her, now charity, now detachment from everything. So the poor virtues live as though strangled without enough food of my will. Ah, if one could see a soul without this celestial food, one would weep over her. So many are the miseries and the rubbish with which she is covered. However, there is more for one to compassionate if one sees a creature starved of corporal food, because many times she lacks the means in order to buy it. But the food of my will is given out for free. Therefore, one who does not take it deserves condemnation, and the condemnation is formed by herself, because she has rejected the food which gave her life. Then afterwards I heard that various people had suffered contrasts, humiliations, and other things. And my sweet Jesus resumed his speaking. My daughter, just as the body contains bad blood which infects the good one, and it is necessary to apply vesicants, leeches, bloodlettings, in order to draw out the bad blood, otherwise one is in danger of remaining paralyzed for the rest of one's life. In the same way, the soul who lacks the continuous food of my will contains many bad humors, and it is necessary to apply the vesicants of humiliations in order to draw out the bad humor of self-esteem, the bites of leeches in order to extract the infected humor of the vainglory of one's own self, immediate bloodlettings to block and draw out the bad blood of the little attachments which she keeps forming in her heart toward the people whom she approaches in doing good. Otherwise those humors would grow so much as to infect everything she does, in such a way as to remain paralyzed in good for the rest of her life. Punctures always do good. They are the sentries of the heart which maintain the blood pure, that is, the intention of the soul upright in doing good. Therefore, if all did good only in order to fulfill my will, punctures would not be necessary, because my will is the safeguard against all bad humors. So punctures are also the penalties for those who do not take enough food of my will. October 17th, 1926, Volume 20. How the Soul Goes Around in All Creation and Redemption, keeping the divine will company in all of its acts, and asking for its kingdom in each one of them. How the Fiat is the foundation of the kingdom of the divine will. It seems I cannot do without continuing my round in the supreme will. I feel it is my true home, and only when I go around within it, then am I content, because I find everything that belongs to my sweet Jesus, and by virtue of his will, all that belongs to him is also mine. Therefore I have much to give to my beloved good. Even more, there is so much to give him that I never finish giving him everything. So I remain always with the desire to go back and continue my round, to be able to give him everything that belongs to his adorable will. So while going around, thinking of the great good that the supreme volition brings to the soul, I prayed to Jesus that he would soon make it known to all, so that they might take part in such a great good. And in order to obtain this, as I reached each created thing, I said to him, I come into the sun to keep company with your will reigning and dominating in it, with all the splendor of its majesty. But while I keep you company in the sun, I pray you that your eternal fiat be known, and just as it reigns triumphantly in the sun, it may come to reign triumphantly in the midst of creatures. See, the sun is also praying you. All of its light turns into prayer, and as it extends over the earth and invests plants and flowers, mountains and plains, seas and rivers with its light, it prays that your fiat may be one upon earth, harmonizing with all creatures. So I am not the only one who is praying, but it is the power of your very will reigning in the sun that is praying. The light is praying. Its innumerable effects, the goods, the colors it contains, are praying. All are praying that your fiat may reign over all. Can you resist such a great mass of light that prays with the power of your own will? And I, little as I am, while keeping you company in this sun, bless, adore, glorify your adorable will, with that magnificence and glory with which your own will glorifies itself in its works. So only in the creatures is your will not to find the perfect glory of its works? Therefore come, may your fiat come. But while I am doing this, I feel all the light of the sun praying that the eternal fiat may come, or rather it is his very adorable will that, investing the light, prays. And I, leaving it there praying, move on into the other created things to make my tiny little visit, to keep a little company with the adorable will in each one of its acts that it exercises in each created thing. Therefore I go through the heavens, the stars, the sea, so that the heavens may pray, the stars may pray, the sea may pray with its murmuring that the supreme fiat be known and reign triumphantly over all creatures, just as it reigns in them. Then, after going around over all created things to keep company with the divine fiat, and to ask within each thing that it may come to reign upon earth, how beautiful it is to see and to hear the whole creation praying that its kingdom may come into the midst of creatures. Then I descend into everything that my Jesus did in redemption, in his tears, in his baby moans, in his works, steps, and words, in his pains, in his wounds, in his blood, and even in his death, so that his tears may pray that his fiat come, his moans and everything he did, all in chorus, may supplicate that his fiat be known, and that his very death may make the life of his divine will rise again in the creatures. Then while I was doing this and other things, I would be too long if I wanted to say everything, my sweet Jesus, clasping me to himself, told me, "Little daughter of my will, you must know that my will left itself reigning in all creation, to give the field to creatures to make as many visits to it for as many things as it created. It wanted the company of the creature in the mute language of the whole universe. How hard is the isolation of this will so holy, that wants to sanctify and finds no one with whom to share its sanctity. It is so rich and yearning to give, and finds no one to whom to give. So beautiful, and it finds no one to embellish. So happy, and it finds no one to make happy. Being able to give, wanting to give, and having no one to whom to give is always a sorrow and an unspeakable pain. And then, to one's yet greater sorrow, being left alone. Therefore, in seeing a creature enter the field of creation to keep it company, it feels delighted, and it feels that the purpose for which it left itself reigning in each created thing is being fulfilled. But what renders it more happy, more glorified, is that, as you reach each created thing, you ask that its fiat be known and reign over everything. And you move my very will in the sun, in the heavens, in the sea, in everything, to pray that the kingdom of my will may come. In fact, since my fiat is in you, it can be said that it is my will itself that prays and moves all of my works, and even my tears and sighs, so that the kingdom of my will may come. You cannot understand what contentment you give me, what a breach it is into my heart and into my very will, to hear all our works praying because they want our fiat. You see, then, my contentment, as I see that you seek nothing for yourself, neither glory, nor love, nor graces. And in seeing that your littleness cannot obtain a kingdom so great, you go around in all my works, wherever an act of my will is present, doing its office, and you make my own fiat say, "Your kingdom come. Oh, please let it be known, loved, and possessed by the human generations." A divine will that prays together with our works, and together with its little daughter, is the greatest portent. It is a power equal to our own that prays, and it is impossible for us not to grant what it asks. How holy, how pure, noble, and fully divine, without a shadow of the human, is the kingdom of our will. Our own fiat will be its basis, its foundation, and its depth, that extending below, in the midst, and above these children of the celestial family, will render their step firm, and the kingdom of my will unshakable for them. October 17th, 1928, Volume 25. How each truth of the fiat possesses an enchantment over the human will. The war of the fiat. Analogy between the conception of Jesus and the Eucharist, and between the prisoner with a capital P and the prisoner with a lowercase p. My poor mind wandered in the divine volition. I felt all the truths spoken to me by my highest good Jesus, like many suns that invested my little human will, such that, enraptured by so much variety of light, it no longer felt like acting. And my highest good Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, each truth I have manifested on my divine will is not only a divine life that I have issued from myself, but it possesses a sweet enchantment to enchant the human will that, enchanted by mine, will feel itself under the enchantment of an inactivity and will give free field of action to my divine will. So each truth on my divine will be a fierce army against the human will. But do you know what it will be fierce with? With light, with strength, with love, with beauty, with sanctity, to wage war on the human will by means of all these weapons. The human will, before all these weapons, will undergo a sweet enchantment, and will let itself be conquered by the divine fiat. Therefore each additional knowledge on it is a greater enchantment that the human will undergo. It can be said that all the truths I have told you about my divine will are as many paths in order for it to make its way into the human will, that will first prepare and then form my kingdom in the midst of creatures. Now, just as each truth possesses an enchantment, so each act done by the creature in my will is an encounter that she has with my volition, to receive all the strength of this divine enchantment. So the more acts of my will she does, the more human ground she loses, acquiring the divine. And if she plunges all of herself into it, the only thing left to her will be to remember that she has a will, but that she keeps it at rest and enchanted by the divine will. After this I continued my acts in the divine fiat, and following its acts, I was accompanying the conception of Jesus in the maternal womb. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, how much analogy exists between the conception I did in the maternal womb and what I do in each consecrated host. See, from heaven I descended to conceive in the womb of my celestial mamma. From heaven I descend to be consecrated, hidden, within the veils of the species of bread. In the dark, immobile, I remained in the maternal womb. In the dark, immobile, and made even smaller, I remain in each host. Look at me. I am here, hidden in this tabernacle. I pray, I cry, and I make not even my breath heard, Within the sacramental veils, my very divine will keeps me as though dead, annihilated, restricted, compressed, while I am alive and give life to all. O abyss of my love, how immeasurable you are! In the maternal womb I was loaded down with the weight of all souls and of all sins. Here, in each host, small as it is, I feel the enormous weight of the burden of the sins of each creature. And while I feel crushed under the enormity of so many sins, I do not tire, because true love never tires and wants to win with the greatest sacrifices. It wants to expose its life for the beloved. This is why I continue my life, from the moment I conceived up to my death, in each sacramental host. Now I want to tell you of the pleasure I feel in having you near my tabernacle, under my sacramental gazes, and the analogy that exists between me and you. See, I am here, hidden under the empire of my divine will. Ah, it is my will itself, its power, that contains the prodigy of hiding me in each host with the consecration. You are in your bed, only by the empire of my fiat. Ah, it is not corporal maladies that keep you hampered. No, but it is my will alone that wants it so. And making a veil of you, it hides me and forms for me a living host, a living tabernacle. Here in this tabernacle I pray continuously. But do you know what my first prayer is? That my will be known, that its rule that keeps me hidden may rule over all creatures, and may reign and dominate in them. In fact, only when my will is known and it forms in them its kingdom, then will my sacramental life have its complete fruit, the fulfillment of the so many sacrifices, the restoration of my life in creatures. And I am here hidden, making many sacrifices to wait for the triumph, the kingdom of my divine will. You too pray, and as you echo my prayer, I hear your continuous speaking by putting all my acts and all created things in motion. And you ask me, in the name of everyone and everything, that my will be known and form in them its kingdom. Your echo and mine are one, and we ask for one same thing, that everything may return into the eternal fiat, that its just rights be given back to it. See, then, how much analogy there is between you and me. But the most beautiful one is that what I want, you want. We are both sacrificed for a cause so holy. Therefore, your company is sweet to me, and in the midst of so many pains that I suffer, it renders me happy. End of October 17th. Fiat.